A very good afternoon to everyone. Welcome back to Civics first year class. We have already discussed the forms of government. We have discussed federal government, unitary government. Then we have discussed parliamentary and presidential government. We have discussed the merits and demerits of these types of governments. Today we will discuss the differences between the unitary government and federal government. Today we will discuss the differences between unitary and federal government. So, yesterday we have started with the forms of government, and I told you what is a unitary government and what is a federal government. So, unitary government is one government for the whole country. You will have only one government for the whole country, whereas federal government, you will have two governments, central government as well as state government. So let us start with the differences. See, unitary government may or may not have written constitution. So when we have discussed the chapter constitution, under that I told you that written constitution is suitable for federal government and unitary government may have written constitution. So here it is not compulsory that unitary government should have written constitution. Whereas in case of federal government, there will be a written constitution because the powers of the government are divided between the center and the state government. So it is compulsory to have written constitution. So when the constitution is not written, that is, it is unwritten form, then it can be a flexible constitution. So unitary government has flexible constitution and federal government will have rigid constitution, because I told you whenever constitution is written, it is rigid. All written constitutions, they are rigid, and all unwritten constitutions are flexible. So federal government will have a written constitution and it is a rigid constitution. Unitary government may or may not have written constitution. If it has a written constitution, it will be, rigid, and if it has a unwritten constitution, then it will be flexible. And in unitary form of government, there is one government. Okay, there is one government for the entire country. For the whole country, there is one government. Whereas in federal form of government, you will have two types of governments. That is at union level and provincial level. So what is this provincial level? It is nothing but state level. Okay, you will have a government at state level and at the central level. So in federal type of government, you will have two governments. Okay, then there is centralization of power. So what do you mean by centralization of power? Centralization of power means all the powers are vested with the central government. There is no division of power between the center and the state. Okay, the central government, it possesses all the powers. But in federal form of government, there is decentralization of power. In federal form of government, there is decentralization of power. What do you mean by decentralization? The powers are divided between the central government and the state government. Okay, the powers are divided between the central government and the state government. And this unitary form of government is suitable for the smaller states or small countries with less population, small geographical area. For such types of countries, this unitary government is suitable. Whereas federal government, it is suitable for the larger states with huge population and a large geographical area. Okay. So if you keep these things in your mind, it will be easy for you. Just note the keywords. What are the keywords? Say unitary government is opposite to the federal government. Just we'll do the keywords again. Okay. We will discuss the keywords again. So what is a unitary government? It is one government for the whole country, whereas federal government, it will have two types of government. That is union or central government. Okay, union, or you can say central government, and provincial or state government. You will have two governments. Then what about the constitution? The unitary government may not have written constitution. Unitary government may not have written constitution, whereas federal government will have written constitution. Federal government will have written constitution. Students, please keep these keywords in your mind. It will be easy for you to learn the answer. Then unitary government, the constitution is flexible, whereas in federal government, the constitution is rigid. What is flexible? That means flexible means it can be amended easily. It can be amended easily, whereas rigid constitution, it cannot be amended easily. Okay, so unitary government will have a flexible constitution and federal government will have a rigid constitution. Then what about the powers? Who is more powerful? Which government is more powerful? In unitary government, you may not have state governments. If they have also, they don't have any importance. So there is centralization of powers. Okay, there is centralization of powers. The power is with the central government. State governments, they do not exist in unitary government. If at all there is state government, it derives the powers from the central government. Okay, so there is centralization of powers, and in federal form of government, there is decentralization of powers. This is suitable for the small countries, and federal government is suitable for the large countries. Okay, I hope I'm clear with this. Let us see next. There are uniform laws throughout the country. So in unitary form of government, the whole country follows the same laws. There is uniformity of laws. Okay, whereas in federal form of government, central government will make laws and state government will make its own laws. And every state has their own laws. So there is no uniformity of laws. There are no uniform laws. There are central laws as well as state laws. Okay. And in unitary form of government, you need judiciary may not be independent. In unitary form of government, judiciary need not be independent, whereas in federal form of government, the judiciary is more powerful. The judiciary is more powerful in federal form of government. So these were the differences between the unitary and federal governments. Now, let us see the next one, that is differences between presidential and parliamentary form of government. Okay, presidential and parliamentary form of government. In parliamentary form of government, see, when we discuss the merits and demerits, I told you in parliamentary form of government, there exists two types of executives. There are two executives. Okay, one is the real executive and another is nominal. So in parliamentary system, you have two executives, real and nominal. Whereas in presidential form of government, you will have only one executive. There is no distinction. Okay, there is no distinction between the real and the nominal executive. There is only one executive. So if you see in parliamentary form of government, the nominal executive, he is the head of the state. He is the head of the state, and real executive is the head of the government. Okay. Real executive is the head of the government, whereas nominal executive is the head of the state. But in presidential form of government, you will have only one real head, only one executive. He is the head of the state and he is the head of the government also. Okay. So in parliamentary form of government, you have two executives. I hope I'm clear with the first point. So let us see the next point. See, the head of the state is nominal and head of the government is real. Just now I have explained this. The head of the state. So example here we can say President of India. So India is the example for parliamentary form of government, right? So in India, we have nominal executive as well as real executive. So who is the nominal executive? President of India is the nominal executive. And who is the real executive? Prime Minister is the real executive. Okay. So in presidential form of government, as you have only one executive, so he is the head of the state, he is the head of the government as well. He is the head of the state as well as he is the head of the government. Okay. Let us move to the next one. In parliamentary form of government, there should be cooperation between the executive and the legislature. Why? Because the executives are part of the legislature. Executives are coming from the legislature. What happens in parliamentary form of government? The people will elect their representatives. Okay, and which house represents the people? It is a lower house represents the people. So the party which secures majority in the lower house, the leader of that party will become the head of the government, that is Prime Minister. So legislature is coming, executive is coming from the legislature. Executive, it is coming from the legislature. So the Prime Minister and his ministers, Prime Minister and his ministers, they are part of legislature. They are part of legislature. They are coming from the legislature. They are elected by the people to the lower house. As their party got majority, they are forming the government. Okay. So legislature and executive, they cooperate with each other. In parliamentary form of government, there is cooperation between the legislative and executive. Legislature and executive. Whereas in presidential form of government, no coordination or cooperation can be seen because both executive and legislature, they are independent of each other. Here, the executive is part of legislature. Okay, executive is part of legislature, but here they are independent of each other. Both the organs, they are independent of each other. So there is no cooperation or coordination. There is no cooperation or coordination between the two organs. I hope I'm clear with the third point. Now here, the tenure of the executive, the term of office. What is tenure? What do you mean by tenure? Tenure means term of office. Term of office. Tenure means term of office. So here in parliamentary form of government, the tenure of the office of the executive, that is the prime minister, is not fixed, or it is uncertain, we can say. It is uncertain. They can, rule for 5 years, or if they are, if they fail to satisfy the legislature, then a no confidence motion can be passed against them. So they may lose the power before also. So there is no certainty. There is no certainty. It is uncertain. The tenure of office is uncertain. We are not sure that the government will complete its tenure of 5 years. Okay. There is no guarantee about it. In parliamentary form of government, there is no guarantee that government, it will complete its tenure of 5 years. After no confidence motion is passed, the prime minister, he will lose his powers. He has to resign, and again the elections are conducted. So the term of office is not guaranteed. It is uncertain. Whereas in presidential form of government, the tenure of the executive is fixed. It is fixed. Okay, as the executive is not responsible to the legislature, there is no coordination or cooperation between the executive and legislature. So there is no question of, no confidence motion against the head of the state. So the tenure of the executive is fixed. Okay. I hope I'm clear with this. Fourth point. Let us see the other points. Now, the Council of Ministers is appointed by the head of the state on the advice of Prime Minister. Who are the Council of Ministers? The team of Prime Minister, the ministers of Prime Minister. Okay. The team of Prime Minister is called as Council of Minister. Who appoints them? They are appointed by the head of the state. Who is the head of the state? It is the president. Okay, the party which secures majority in the lower house, the leader of that party will be appointed as the prime minister. Then the prime minister will select his team from his party, and he will advise the president, the head of the state, to appoint them. Okay. Is it clear? Then the cabinet in in presidential form of government, the cabinet is the creation of president. So what is happening in parliamentary system? The prime minister is selecting the ministers. He is advising the president to appoint them. Okay. But in presidential form of government, the president himself, the head of the government, that is head of the state, you can say, he himself will create or select his ministers. Okay, the president himself creates his own cabinet. He selects his own ministers. Okay. Next, in parliamentary form of government, ministers are the members of legislature. I told you, all the ministers, they are part of legislature. They are elected by the people. Okay, they belong to the majority party in the lower house. So all the ministers, they are members of the legislature. Whereas in presidential form of government, the ministers or cabinet or secretaries, they are called as cabinet also, or secretaries or ministers. They are not the members of legislature. They are not the members of legislature. Why? Because both legislature and executive, it is working independently. They are working independent of each other. So, they are not the members of legislature. Remember this point. In parliamentary form of government, executives are part of legislature. In presidential form of government, executives, they are not the members of the legislature. Okay. Then next, ministers are responsible to the head of the state. We'll divide this point into half. The first part is the ministers, the team of prime ministers, they are responsible to the head of the state. Head of the state is president. So president can question them. Okay, president can question them. And all the ministers collectively, they are answerable to legislature also. Okay, they are collectively answerable to the legislature. This feature, this is called as collective responsibility. It is called as collective responsibility. What do you mean by collective responsibility? The prime ministers and all his ministers, they are answerable to the legislature for their decisions. For their decisions. Then, for example, if any policy, fails, any policy of the government fails, then only one minister cannot be made responsible for it. It is the whole team, the prime minister and all his ministers, they are collectively answerable to the legislature. So there is the principle of collective responsibility in parliamentary form of government. There is a principle of collective responsibility. What does it mean? All the ministers along with the prime minister are answerable to the legislature, are answerable to the legislature. Okay. Whereas in presidential form of government, secretaries are not responsible to the legislature, but they are answerable to the head of the state. Here, in presidential form of government, as executive and legislature, they are independent of each other. So, the ministers or the secretaries of the president, the team of the president, they are nowhere responsible to the legislature. They are not answerable to the legislature, but they are answerable to the head of the state, that is the president. They are answerable to head of the state. Okay, I hope this is clear. So, in parliamentary form of government, there is principle of collective responsibility. In presidential form of government, you don't have this principle of collective responsibility. Okay, I hope I'm clear with these answers, these two differences between unitary government and federal government, differences between parliamentary government and presidential government. See, one difference you can expect in the exam, that is for sure you can expect. If you are writing five differences, it is enough. You can score 5 marks. Now, let us move to the next question, that is write a note on presidential form of government. So, what is a presidential form of government? We have discussed unitary government, federal government, parliamentary government. Now, we will discuss presidential government. In presidential form of government, the chief executive, that is the head of the state, the chief executive is president. Okay, the chief executive is president. In presidential, from the word itself, you will know the president is the chief executive. He is the head of the state and he is the head of the government. In presidential form of government, you will have only one executive. You will have only one executive, that is president, and he is the head of the state and he is the head of the government as well. Okay. And in presidential form of government, it functions on the basis of theory of separation of powers. I told you yesterday, Montesquieu, he gave this theory of separation of powers, where the powers of all the three organs are divided and each organ will check the other organ. It will stop the other organs from misusing its powers. Okay, so there is, in presidential form of government, there is theory of separation of powers. That means legislature, executive and judiciary, they work independently. In parliamentary system, we have seen that executives, they are coming from the legislature. Executives are the part of legislature and executives are answerable to the legislature, and judiciary, it is, checking the executive and the legislature. But in presidential form of government, all the three organs, they function independently. They work independently. And each organ checks the misuse of power by other organs. Okay, so what is this principle called? It is called as checks and balances. Checks and balances. What happens here? All the organs, they will check whether the other two organs are misusing its powers, and they will balance it there. So that is why it is called as checks and balances. Okay. Then the experts of various fields are appointed as secretaries. Here, in parliamentary form of government, the ministers of the prime minister, they are not the experts. Many of them are even, uneducated. But here in presidential form of government, the experts are appointed as ministers. Okay, they are appointed as ministers and they are not the members of legislature. They do not belong to legislature. They are the experts and the president directly appoints them. Whereas in parliamentary system, what happens? The prime minister, he will select the minister and the president will appoint them. Then another point is, the president is elected by the people. In presidential form of government, the president is directly elected by the people. Okay, example, the president of USA, he is directly elected by the people of USA. Whereas if you see in India, in parliamentary form of government, the president is indirectly elected and the prime minister, he is not elected as the head of the government, but his party is being elected. Being the leader of the majority party, he becomes the prime minister. But in presidential form of government, the president is elected by the people and the president enjoys fixed tenure. Okay, president has fixed term of office. Tenure means term of office. Okay. In parliamentary system, the prime minister, his tenure is not fixed. Okay. Whereas in presidential system, the term of office of president is fixed. He can be impeached. What do you mean by impeached? Removed from the office. He can be removed from the office. How? By a resolution in legislature if he is violating the constitution. If president is violating the constitution, he can be removed by the legislature. So in parliamentary form, like in India also, the head of the state, that is president, can be impeached by the legislature. Okay, if he is violating the constitution, if he is violating the constitution. I hope it's clear to all of you. We have discussed all the short answers. Okay, you have 6 short answers in this chapter. You will get 1 question out of this 6. And mostly they'll ask you differences, either differences between the parliamentary and presidential government or unitary and federal government. Okay, so 1 difference is compulsory. Now let us move to the very short answers. So what is checks and balances? It is the feature of presidential form of government. Okay, this is the principle where the 3 organs of the government, they work independently, but they check the misuse of power by other organs. So what is checks and balances? It is a principle where 1 organ of the government is checking other 2 organs of misuse of power. Okay, so what happens when there is checks and balances? All the 3 organs, they are working independently. There is no organ will become despot, dominant. No organ of the government will become dominant, despot. So there will be balance of power. Okay, if any organ is becoming more powerful, then there is no balance of power, right? So for balance of power, all the 3 organs, they should work independently and they should check the other organs if they are misusing the powers. So this is called checks and balances. This is called checks and balances. I hope I'm clear with this. So, so in checks and balances, the 3 organs of the government, they are independent of each other. But all the organs, they will check the other 2 organs for misuse of the power. So with this, what happens? No organ will become dominant or despot. Okay, so there will be balance of power. Next is collective responsibility. This is what I have explained you when I was explaining you about parliamentary form of government. In parliamentary form of government, there is a principle called collective responsibility. What is this? It means that all the ministers collectively, as a team, collectively means as a team, together, they are responsible. Responsible means answerable. Answerable to the legislature. So what is collective responsibility? It is one of the features of parliamentary form of government where all the ministers as a team are answerable to the legislature. So how they are answerable here? In parliamentary form of government, we have seen that legislature controls executive. Legislature controls the executive. How it is controlling the executives? By asking questions and passing resolutions. Okay, in parliamentary form of government, the legislature, it is controlling the executives by asking questions and passing resolutions. So the executives, they continue in the office. They continue in the office till they enjoy the majority support in the lower house of the legislature. So Prime Minister and his ministers, they continue in the office till they enjoy the support of the members of legislature. So that is why we have discussed that the tenure of the government, or the tenure of the executive, we can say, the tenure of the executive is uncertain. That means a no confidence motion is passed against the government, then the Prime Minister and his ministers have to resign. So legislature is controlling the executive. Next is no confidence motion. So I have been using this word no confidence motion. So let us see what is this. So legislature, it controls the executive in parliamentary form of government. Okay, this point we know. In parliamentary form of government, the legislature, it is controlling the executive. So executive, they enjoy their position or office till they have support of the members of the legislature, till they have majority support. If a no confidence, what do you mean by no confidence? That means we don't have trust now. We don't trust the government. If no confidence motion is passed, means executive is losing the confidence or support of the legislature. Here, the executive is losing the support of the legislature. So the executive must resign. The executive, he must resign. Okay. Is it clear? Let us see the next question, that is Prime Minister. So parliamentary form of government is also known as prime ministerial government. The Prime Minister, he is the real executive in parliamentary form of government. See, students, I have been telling you, if you are thorough with your LAQs and SAQs, it will be very easy for you to write your BSAQs. Okay, so we have discussed the powers of executive. Under that, we have discussed parliamentary form of government also. So in parliamentary form of government, Prime Minister is the real executive. All the decisions of the government, are taken by the Prime Minister. And he selects all his ministers. The Prime Minister will select his ministers. Okay. And they belong to the same party. Okay. The majority party in the parliament. Okay. Then he acts as the chief advisor to the president. In parliamentary form of government, president is nominal. President is nominal executive. So president, he performs all his functions on the advice of Prime Minister, because this Prime Minister is the real executive. He is the head of the real executives. Prime Minister and his ministers, along with all the government employees, are called as executives. So the Prime Minister, he is the head of all the executives, and he is the chief advisor to the president. President will perform all his functions on the advice of the Prime Minister. Okay, it is very simple. See, I don't know how people will fail in civics. It is very simple subject, easy subject. If you are able to understand, you can write it. Next is president. So if you talk about parliamentary form of government, in parliamentary form of government, we have two executives where president is nominal executive. But in presidential form of government, president is the chief executive. See here, parliamentary government, president is nominal. Presidential government, president is the chief executive. In both the cases, he is the head of the state. In both the cases, he is the head of the state. He is the first citizen of the country. Okay, they are regarded as first citizen. Okay. The next, he can be removed from the office through impeachment resolution, be it in the parliamentary government or in the presidential government. If president, if he fails to perform his functions or obligations, or if he is violating the constitution, then the legislature can remove. Remove means impeach. Okay. Remove the president. The legislature can remove the president, be it a parliamentary government or presidential government. If president is, violating the constitution, then he can be removed by the legislature. Okay. How? By passing a resolution called impeachment resolution. By passing a resolution called impeachment resolution. Okay. I hope I'm clear with all the BSAQs till here. What is impeachment? It is the method of removing the president. It is a resolution passed by the legislature to remove the president. And in both parliamentary and presidential form of government, we have this impeachment procedure. Okay, this procedure has to be followed to remove the head of the state. Now, let us see the next question, that is classification of government. See, we have seen a government of different types, like we have seen, presidential, parliamentary, then we have seen unitary, federal, then we have monarchy, aristocracy, oligarchy. So what are these? So this is the classification given by the Aristotle. So he has done this classification on the basis of number of people who are ruling. Number of people who are ruling. On the basis of number of people ruling, he has done the classification. Suppose if there is only one ruler, okay, he is called as monarch. If he is working for the welfare of his people, then he is called as monarch. And the perverted form, that is, if that one ruler, okay, if that one ruler, he is not bothered about the people, okay, then that form of government is called as tyranny. Okay, monarchy is where the king, the ruler, he will work or he will make laws. His intention is welfare of the people. But in perverted form, where the ruler does not have any interest in the welfare of the people, then that type of government is called as tyranny. Okay. Then where you second form of second classification is when there are few rulers, where you have rich people ruling, where you have rich people ruling. Okay. So that form of government is called as aristocracy. It is called as aristocracy. Here again, it in a normal form, it is called as It is aristocracy because the rulers, their intention is good, their intention is welfare of the people. But in perverted form, it is called as oligarchy. It is called as oligarchy, where the people who are ruling, they are more concerned about their own power. Okay. They are least bothered about the people. And then you have many rulers. Okay. Normal form, we call it as polity. Okay. We call it as polity. And perverted form is democracy, where everybody wants to come into power. Okay, the power is with the people, and people will elect their representatives. So these representatives, till they come to the power, they come into power, they work for the people. Okay, once they get the power, they forget about the people. Okay, politicians or political leaders, mostly it happens. So that is perverted form of, many rulers. When you have many rulers, then it is democracy. Okay. Did you understand this classification of government done by the Aristotle? He has done it on the basis of number of persons or number of people ruling, who has got ruling power. If there is one ruler, then it is monarchy. If he is, working for the welfare of the people, if his intentions are good, but if it is, if he is more concerned about his power, then it is tyranny. He is not bothered about the people. Then when you have few rulers, rich people ruling, then it is aristocracy, and its perverted form is oligarchy. And when you have many rulers, it is polity in the normal form and democracy in the perverted form. So this is another simple question. Just remember, on the basis of the number of people who are ruling, Aristotle has done the classification. The next is, what do you understand by parliamentary government? Okay. So in parliamentary government, you will have two executives. You will have two executives, the nominal executive and real executive. Nominal executive and real executive. So in parliamentary form of government, executive is a part of legislature. Executives, they are coming from the legislature. They are part of legislature, and executives, they are collectively responsible to the legislature. In parliamentary form of government, there is a principle of collective responsibility, where all the ministers along with the prime minister are answerable or responsible to the legislature. And here in parliamentary government, it works under the leadership of prime minister. Parliamentary government, it works under the leadership of prime minister. So examples of parliamentary form of government, we have in England and India. India and England are the two examples of parliamentary form of government. Then what do you mean? See, already we have discussed this answers. I told you, if you are able to learn SAQs or LAQs, you will be able to answer VSAQs. So what do you mean by federal government? In federal government, again, you have two types of government. One is central government or center government, and another is state government. Okay, central government and state government. In federal government, you will have two governments, central government and the state government. And the powers, the administrative powers are divided between the center and the state. The constitution will divide the powers between the center and the state. And both center and the state government, they enjoy equal status. They enjoy equal status. Okay. There will be division of powers between the center and the states. Example, we have America, Canada, India. So all these states, we have federal form of government. Okay. So I hope I'm clear with this chapter. The weightage for this chapter is only 7 marks. But if you are learning SAQs, you will be in the position to answer the SAQ also. Okay. And I insist that you should focus more on the SAQ questions, because you will have to answer 15 questions. 15 questions for 2 marks each. You can easily score 30 marks if you are writing VSAQs perfectly, without mistakes, in good handwriting, your presentation is good, your paper presentation is good, then you can easily score 30 marks. You will not lose marks here. In 2 marks questions, if you are writing perfectly, like how I have given on the screen, you can see all the answers are point-wise. Okay. Like this, if you divide the answer into points and if you write it, you can score 30 on 30. Okay. It is very easy to get passing marks. Only the students who don't attempt the paper completely, they fail. Otherwise, there is no question of failing in civics. So with this, I conclude my today's class. Tomorrow we will start with the